Well, thank you for bearing with us when we had a 2-second break there while Darryle got set up. I am very pleased to introduce this next Toastmaster giving a longer and more prepared speech this evening. Darryle is a very experienced Toastmaster, and I am very excited about what he can share with us tonight. If you could all please help me welcome Darryle Brown.
How many of you have ever had a situation where you were called upon to do a particular task, you were completely unprepared, and you bombed? How many of you have had that experience? Did you know that many people who are afraid to step out and do public speaking experience that very thing? They're afraid that they are going to fall flat on their face. But there's a way to overcome that fear. And that is, for us in the Toastmasters organization, it's two things. It's not a magic trick. It's preparation and practice. Tonight, that's what we're going to talk about. How important it is for you to prepare yourself when you're called upon to do a particular project. How many of you feel a lot more comfortable when you're prepared? Show of hands. So, when you are prepared, don't you feel a little bit more relaxed when it comes to preparing, even if you're somewhat nervous before you do that particular task? It makes a difference, doesn't it? What's important for us, especially in our experience as Toastmasters, is that we absolutely have to prepare ourselves and practice for us to be able to master our communication skills. Now, mind you, table topics by design is to harden you and get you prepared, or to focus more on preparation when you're called upon to speak off the cuff. And that's not what I'm talking about. But what I'm talking about is how important it is for you when you're called upon to speak at the meetings, when you're called upon to speak about a particular project and the status of it. You want to look good in front of the managers, in front of the bosses, and in front of your customers, correct? I could probably ask many of you about several stories that you have when you felt the most prepared, and when you were finished with that particular project and you saw the results, the feeling that you had, I'm sure, was phenomenal. For me, when I first started as a Toastmaster, I prepared, I practiced, because I had struggles dealing with nervousness, and also was terrified at the idea of forgetting an important part of my speech right in the midst of it. Now, there are times when it will still occur anyway, and there's nothing wrong with that. As you grow and as you progress, you're going to find yourself in situations where you'll be able to rebound much quicker because you practiced and you prepared yourself, compared to being flustered, running late, and not knowing exactly what you're supposed to say or what you need to say when the moment of truth comes. What's important for you to become a better speaker, especially as a Toastmaster, and take what you've learned here and bring it into the workplace, bring it into your business, bring it into those critical areas where communication is called upon, where you are seen as a person who's credible, a person who is an expert, a person who knows their craft. You have to be prepared for those moments when they come. What's critical in this as well is one essential element. If you're always prepared, you'll never be caught off guard. So what can we say when it comes to preparation and practice? Preparation and practice leads to excellence. How many of you want to be excellent at what you do? Do you think that a person who has bad habits, when it comes to preparing themselves, do they have the best chance of results? No. Probably not, right? So here's some things you would need to consider becoming familiar with when it comes to preparing yourself. There's some basic elements to being prepared when it comes to speeches, and that's what we're going to focus our efforts on. The lectern and the audience location is really important. If you have an opportunity when you are doing a speaking engagement or even in the club itself, you want to make sure that everything is set up the way that you need to have it set up so that you can avoid or prevent any discrepancies, and that your particular equipment, technology, which sometimes break down, is flawless and you're ready to go when that time comes to do your presentation. You also need to be familiar with microphone usage. Sometimes people have the microphone up against their mouths, and that's not the proper way to do use the audio. And it sounds weird, doesn't it? Even using a fake microphone like I'm doing it, doesn't it sound weird? How many of you have seen people use the microphone in that manner and it's crazy. So it's what's important also when you're preparing yourself, know where the microphone needs to be. Most people, when they are trained, you can tell by how they hold their microphone, how well prepared they are when they give speeches and how well trained they are. And commonly, it's usually in the middle area where there's somewhat of a distance from your chest, but right in the middle is usually the most ideal way to prepare yourself when it comes to using a microphone. Also, room conditions. There are some times when the temperature is less than ideal. When we had that speech contest in here one time, it felt like an inferno. Sometimes it's beyond your control, too cold, too hot. Other times it's ideal, like tonight. If you're able to get the personnel to adjust the room, if it's not in the ideal conditions, make that happen early on. The earlier you do it, the better for the audience, better for you as the speaker. Also, the use of visual aids. There are countless times I've seen when people have set up to do slides and the projector doesn't work, or some other calamity takes place that doesn't enable them to make the most of the visual aids. When I have those situations, I'm still prepared. And when you're faced with a situation where your slides break down, make sure that you have handouts that can give them the same information and takeaways that you need to have. Otherwise, make sure it's running before you get to the meeting, and also when you get to the meeting, get here early. That's what I did here. I prepared myself, and as you can see, the slides are working well. It could be a disaster at any time when you're not prepared, but when it is, it flows. Also, it's important to become familiar with not only the lectern and audience location, but the speaking area. What area do you intend to use? And if you're using video cameras, what is the key area that you want to make sure that you have the space to be able to move around and also still maintain the visual within the area in which you use video and other accessories? Also, the audience configuration. Is it the way that you need for you to be able to freely deliver your speeches? That's always really important when it comes to how well prepared you are in giving your speeches. And the easier, the more relaxed flow that you have, it goes absolutely great when it comes to delivering your message, and people are in a relaxed, fun atmosphere and are able to hear what you have to say. Also, the stage location or the platform steps or ramp. if that's relevant. There are some places where there is a raised stage, other times it's just a flat surface. Whatever surface that you're working with when you're getting ready to speak, the more you know ahead of time, the better you can prepare yourself so you know where you're going to stand, where you're going to move around so that your message can flow without distraction or without finding yourself in a situation where you can't adjust to the floor configuration. I've seen that in speech contests many times, and it really throws a lot of speakers off, and it can cost them the actual speech contest itself because they're not flowing the same way they did at another location. You got to adjust to the location and still be able to deliver your message in the same manner no matter where you're at. So it's important to know as much as you can about where you're going to be speaking so that you're free to do so. Also become, as I mentioned before, familiar with microphones. Depending on the size of the group, how large the room is, microphones, as we mentioned before, are important. Knowing your audience is really critical. You have a diverse demographic of people with different ideas. You have to make a determination in your message what's appropriate, taking into account cultural differences, age differences, and other diversity factors that what you might say to some person may sound funny to them, but inappropriate to other people. So it's important to keep your message universal and also knowing your audience in a manner in which you can adjust in case you have to tweak it a little bit so that you're able to speak to all audiences. Poor acoustics, it happens at times. This particular room here, it has an echo, but we work with it. We're still able to deliver, especially if you speak loudly like I tend to do at times, or speak lowly. As long as you can make the most of it so that people can still hear you, it's effective, even regardless of what you have to encounter with the acoustics. Also, voice strain. Make sure that you have your voice ready to go. Drink some liquids, or be sure to prepare yourself in that manner too so that you don't sound raspy or weird on purpose when it comes to preparing yourself. Also, as we mentioned, room conditions, temperature. I'm not going to go back into those again, but also don't let the discreet entry of latecomers distract you. You keep it moving, you keep your message flowing, and allow them to not feel uncomfortable when they come in just because they happen to be running late, and that they can also enjoy your message as well, and just keep it flowing. Also, competitive outside noise from time to time, even in here, we have people next door in the break room that they're laughing and having a good time, or there's a baby crying outside. Do you stop? Do you get flustered? Do you get distracted as a result of that? You have to keep it moving in order for you to ensure that you have a good flow and your message is still delivered, because the audience also understands when there's distractions. But for you, you can't let it show. You gotta make it look as though you have total control of all of the outside and inside noise. Even though that might not necessarily be the case, you make it look like that's the case for you. Also, it's important to become familiar with being in space where everyone can see you. When everyone can see you well and there are no poles, that is another reason why I deliberately chose this room compared to downstairs, because there are some poles and some areas where it's not ideal when it comes to videotaping a particular presentation. But if you have to work in those conditions or those locations, try to make it work as much as possible regardless of the obstructions. Also, an adequate sized viewing screen. Can everyone see the viewing screen okay? That's the beauty of it when it comes to these types of slides. I wanted to make sure it was as big as possible, so even those who might wear glasses or be way in the back of the room can still be able to see it. Can you see it okay there, Alvin?
I can, sir.
That is very good. Also, handout distribution, particularly if you intend to hand out particular materials, it's best to do it in the beginning or already have it laid out and tell your audience, these are the handouts I want you to take away from this particular presentation, and it makes it so much easier than actually in the middle of your speech you're passing out handouts. It is very distracting, and what happens is the audience tends to read the handout and not focus on you. So how you have those handouts and how you use it is very important in your preparation. So when it comes to rehearsing a speech, so now how do you prepare? How do you rehearse for a speech? If you could stand up and tell the audience, how do you do it?
It depends on the type of speech, actually, I've discovered. If I'm competing, I actually do memorize it. And I find ways to cue my brain with what's coming next by blocking it like a play on stage through body language. But tonight I'm giving another kind of speech that I pretty much know the topic really well, and so I just know my bullet points, and then those are the points I'll hit during my speech.
Excellent. How many of you use teddy bears or other pretend audience members to help you to prepare? Any of you?
My God.
Great. That is a way in which, especially if you have the jitters before a real audience, you should consider when you're rehearsing a speech, use whether it's mannequins, dolls, teddy bears, some kind of inanimate object that you can visualize as your audience, because that will also, as you practice and rehearse that speech, it will feel a lot better for you and it'll help you bring down those jitters. So when the real deal happens, the moment of truth where you have to give that speech, you're ready to go. And you feel less nervous. You feel more confident because you're taking the time to rehearse and pretend. Even sometimes you have to pretend that you're dealing with a real audience. I just want to tell you something, that old saying that pretend like everyone is in their underwear, it does not work. And believe me, some people probably would have second thoughts of you wanting to visualize them in their underwear. I don't want you to see me in my underwear. So, so no, don't use that as your pretend. Consider the teddy bears a lot more safer. Practice ideas, not words. When you have a general idea, you're already thinking of stories, aren't you, Brian? When you're thinking of ideas, you're thinking of a particular subject matter. Doesn't that make a difference, Charity, when you are looking to bring out a particular story? You're thinking about an idea, and sometimes it takes on a life of its own. It goes a direction that's unexpected, doesn't it?
Yes.
So make the most of ideas. You don't have to use perfect words. Sometimes when we use the word of the day, if you incorporate it in that, that's a bigger task and sometimes a bigger challenge than actually practicing words that you want to incorporate in a written speech. Just focus on the idea and let everything else flow. Prepare a mental draft of the speech. So when you're practicing and you're rehearsing, think about what you're going to say in the opening, think about your body, and think about the conclusion, and let it flow from there. Some things you want to take out, some things you want to add to it. Sometimes at the moment, when you allow yourself to be free, it can have an even more dramatic effect than you expected. Also, finish each rehearsal session. Do your speech from beginning to end. And believe me, that each time you do it, you're going to find yourself getting better and better. How about improving your speech? Well, add improvements gradually. Just as I said before, the more you practice, you add those improvements, know what to take away, know what to add. Arrange for feedback. Make sure that that's a critical element when it comes to these speeches, is ensuring that the feedback that you receive can help you improve and get better and better. Extra considerations. Provide an introduction. Let the Toastmaster do most of the work to set the stage for you and the audience, so that it makes it easier, that you don't have to tell people, okay, this is what I'm going to talk about, and then go right into it. That's maybe 5 minutes that are lost that can otherwise be used for your speech itself. Prepare yourself physically. Make sure that you are in good health and you're ready to go, and that your nerves are as calm as possible. Drink some tea or something that can help relax you. Have, as I mentioned before, a mental rehearsal, that you are mentally focused and ready to go into speech. And when you do that, in conclusion, good things happen when preparedness meets opportunity. Toastmasters.